If a man is deeply in love with you, you will feel it before you can explain it, in his eyes, in his silence, in the way he shows up emotionally and then suddenly doesn't. And that contradiction is where the confusion begins. Because this is not the story of a man who doesn't care. This is the story of a man who cares more than he knows how to handle. Love is present, but the inner conflict is stronger. This is the part most people misunderstand. They assume that when someone hesitates, withdraws, or behaves inconsistently, love must be weak or absent. But in many cases, love is not the missing element at all. What is missing is inner alignment. The feeling exists, sometimes intensely, but it collides with unresolved psychological forces that are louder, older, and more dominant than desire. Love, when it appears, does not arrive alone. It activates everything beneath the surface. Especially for a man who has learned to survive through control, emotional restraint, or self-reliance, love feels less like comfort and more like disruption. It challenges the internal structure he built to stay functional. So even though the emotion is real, it immediately triggers resistance. This is why the inner conflict becomes stronger than the feeling itself. On one side, there is genuine attachment, curiosity, emotional recognition, a sense of this matters. On the other side, there is fear, fear of dependence, fear of loss, fear of exposure, fear of repeating old pain that was never consciously processed. These fears do not present themselves logically. They operate from beneath awareness, influencing behavior without explanation. The man experiencing this conflict often doesn't fully understand what's happening inside him. He only feels pressure, tension, a sense of being pulled in two directions at once. One part of him wants closeness, intimacy, depth. Another part wants distance, safety, familiarity, control. The closer love gets, the louder the internal alarms become. This is where confusion is born. He may think he needs space when what he actually needs is integration. He may believe something is wrong with the connection when what's actually wrong is the unresolved material the connection has activated. Love becomes associated with discomfort, not because love is harmful, but because it exposes unfinished inner work. This inner conflict often comes from earlier emotional experiences where vulnerability had consequences. Emotional neglect, conditional approval, betrayal, abandonment, or even environments where feelings were discouraged. Over time, the psyche learns that closeness equals risk. So when love appears later in life, it collides with this internal rule. The result is paralysis. He feels deeply, but cannot move forward cleanly. He wants connection, but sabotages it with hesitation. He cares, but cannot consistently act in ways that reflect that care. From the outside, this looks like mixed signals. From the inside, it feels like an internal standoff. And because the conflict is unconscious, it is rarely communicated clearly. Instead of saying, "I'm afraid of what this awakens in me," he may say nothing, or he may rationalize, or he may withdraw without explanation. Not because the love disappeared, but because the fear became louder than the feeling. This is the danger of inner conflict. It does not eliminate love, it immobilizes it. Love without inner coherence becomes trapped. It cannot express itself freely. It cannot move toward commitment or clarity. It exists in tension, oscillating between approach and avoidance. And the person experiencing it often feels exhausted, confused, and ashamed of their own inconsistency. What makes this especially painful is that love alone cannot resolve the conflict. Feeling more does not fix it. Wanting harder does not fix it. The conflict persists until it is brought into awareness and confronted directly. Until then, love remains present, but restrained, genuine, but obstructed, real, but unable to move beyond the internal barriers that were built long before this connection ever began. And so the relationship does not fail because love is absent, but because the psyche is divided, and the divided self cannot fully choose what it secretly desires most. That is why the connection feels intense, personal, and strangely fragile all at once. You are not meeting him only in his strengths or his confident self-image. You are meeting him at the exact point where his inner structure is unfinished. The place where old emotional material still lives, unresolved and unintegrated, becomes the place where he experiences you most strongly. Love does not always attach to what is whole. Often it attaches to what is exposed. When he encounters you, something in him recognizes familiarity, not because you resemble the past, but because you activate emotional layers that were never fully processed. These layers are not conscious memories most of the time. They are sensations, reactions, protective impulses, and emotional reflexes formed long before he knew how to name them. This is why his response to you can feel disproportionate. The depth of his feeling may not match the length of your shared history. The intensity may seem sudden, even overwhelming. That intensity does not come only from the present moment. It is amplified by everything unresolved that you have touched. You are not simply someone he cares about. You are a mirror that reflects the places where his emotional development paused, where healing did not occur. Coping mechanisms formed: distance, control, avoidance, humor, intellectualization, self-sufficiency. These strategies once kept him safe. But now, in the presence of genuine connection, they begin to fail. And when old defenses fail, the psyche reacts with confusion. He feels pulled toward you because you represent something authentic, something emotionally real. But at the same time, you unsettle him because you bypass the strategies he relies on to stay regulated. You feel him in a place that has no armor. That is why closeness feels both desired and dangerous. In that unhealed space, love does not feel like calm expansion. It feels like exposure. It stirs grief he never mourned, needs he never allowed himself to admit, fears he learned to suppress rather than understand. Your presence activates emotional content that was meant to stay buried. And buried material does not rise quietly. This is why he may alternate between openness and withdrawal. One moment, he lets you in. The next, he pulls away as if he has gone too far. The push and pull is not about you. It is about his nervous system trying to manage an internal overload. He may not have language for this. He may interpret the discomfort as doubt, confusion, or uncertainty about the connection. But what he is actually experiencing is emotional exposure without the internal tools to hold it. He feels you where he hasn't healed, and that place is sensitive. In unhealed areas, the psyche is reactive rather than responsive. It moves from instinct, not intention. So instead of leaning into love, he may unconsciously protect himself from it. Not because he doesn't value the connection, but because it threatens the fragile balance he has maintained for years. This creates a silent contradiction. The deeper he feels, the more he struggles to stay present. The more meaningful the bond becomes, the more pressure he feels to retreat. He may believe he needs clarity, time, or space, when what he actually needs is awareness. Until healing occurs, Love will always touch the wound before it reaches the heart. And when love touches a wound, it does not soothe it immediately. It exposes it. It reveals what was unfinished, what was denied, what was postponed. That exposure can feel unbearable to someone who learned early on that emotional pain must be contained at all costs. So he remains divided, drawn to you by authenticity, yet restrained by the unhealed self that fears being overwhelmed. You feel him reaching for you emotionally, then disappearing. Not because the feeling fades, but because the place where he feels you most deeply is also the place where he feels most vulnerable, least defended, and least prepared to stay open. It rarely announces itself as fear. It doesn't say, I am afraid of closeness, or I don't know how to stay. Instead, it disguises itself as logic, space, independence, business, or emotional neutrality. From the outside, it looks like detachment. From the inside, it feels like self-preservation. Distance is not always rejection. Often, it is the most familiar form of safety. When fear is activated, especially in intimate connection, the nervous system seeks regulation. For some people, regulation comes through closeness. For others, it comes through withdrawal. A man who learned early that emotions were unpredictable or unsafe often discovers that stepping back restores a sense of control. Distance becomes his way of breathing again. This is why the moment intimacy deepens, he may pull away. Not because the bond weakens, but because the emotional intensity crosses a threshold he does not know how to manage. Closeness activates vulnerability. Vulnerability activates memory. And memory activates fear, even when the present moment is not actually dangerous. Fear does not distinguish between past and present. It reacts to sensation, not context. So when he feels himself becoming emotionally invested, his system interprets it as risk. The risk of being needed, the risk of losing autonomy, the risk of being seen too clearly. These fears operate beneath conscious thought, shaping behavior without explanation. To maintain internal stability, he creates distance, physical distance, emotional distance, conversational distance. He may communicate less, share less, initiate less. This withdrawal is not calculated. It is instinctive. And because fear does not want to be exposed, it adopts a reasonable tone. He tells himself he needs time. He says he needs clarity. He convinces himself he is overwhelmed, busy, unsure. These explanations are not lies. They are translations of fear into acceptable language. Distance feels justified, even necessary. What he may not realize is that distance does not resolve fear. It only quiets it temporarily. The relief he feels when he steps back reinforces the behavior. His system learns that withdrawal equals safety, so the pattern repeats. Every time connection deepens, distance follows. The closer love comes, the farther he retreats. This creates a painful contradiction for the person on the other side. You feel the emotional connection, then experience the sudden absence. You sense meaning, then encounter silence. It feels confusing, even personal. But fear is impersonal. It is protective, not relational. Fear does not ask, who do I love? It asks, how do I survive? And distance has been his survival strategy for a long time. In this state, he may still care deeply. He may still think about you, miss you, feel drawn to you. Distance does not erase attachment. It suppresses expression. The feeling remains, but it is contained, restricted, controlled. This is why distance can coexist with longing. The danger is that fear, when unexamined, begins to define the relationship. What started as protection becomes a pattern. Distance becomes the default response to emotional activation. And without awareness, it feels like choice rather than compulsion. From the outside, it looks like indecision. From the inside, it feels like relief mixed with loss. He may not understand why. He feels calmer when he pulls away, but emptier at the same time. He may not connect his sense of safety to his sense of isolation. Fear keeps these experiences separate to maintain control, but the mask cannot hold forever. Distance prevents immediate pain, but it also prevents intimacy, growth, and resolution. It freezes the connection in an unresolved state where nothing fully ends and nothing fully begins. Fear wears the mask of distance to protect him from what he does not know how to hold emotionally. And until fear is recognized for what it is, distance will continue to appear not as avoidance, but as necessity, not as withdrawal, but as wisdom, not as fear, but as the only way his inner world knows how to stay intact. Most people believe they act from choice, intention, and logic. They assume decisions are made in the present based on current circumstances. But much of human behavior is not directed by what is happening now. It is directed by what happened before awareness had language, before understanding had structure, before emotions were allowed to be felt and processed. Unhealed emotional wounds do not disappear. They go underground. When something remains unresolved, it does not stay passive. It becomes active from beneath consciousness, shaping reactions, preferences, boundaries, and patterns without announcing itself. This is why someone can genuinely want closeness, stability, and love, yet behave in ways that undermine all three. The wound does not say, "I am a wound." It says, "This feels familiar." Familiarity is powerful. The psyche is drawn to what it knows, even when what it knows is painful. If early emotional experiences involved inconsistency, emotional absence, or conditional affection, the nervous system learns to associate love with uncertainty. Later in life, when a healthy or meaningful connection appears, it may feel unfamiliar, even threatening. So behavior shifts. He may hesitate when things are going well. He may feel restless instability. He may sabotage connection just as it deepens. Not because he wants to lose it, but because his unconscious does not recognize safety without tension. This is how unconscious wounds override conscious desire. A man may consciously believe he wants intimacy. He may say it, think it, even feel it. But if intimacy activates unresolved fear, shame, or grief, his behavior will contradict his words. He will act from protection, not intention. The conscious mind asks, "What do I want?" The unconscious asks, "What keeps me safe?" And the unconscious answers first. This is why explanations often come after actions. He pulls away, then justifies it. He distances himself, then searches for reasons. The behavior is already decided. The narrative comes later. Unconscious wounds do not operate logically. They operate emotionally and somatically. A tone of voice, a moment of closeness, a feeling of being needed can trigger an old emotional memory stored in the body. The reaction is immediate, automatic, and often confusing even to the person experiencing it. He may feel compelled to withdraw without knowing why. He may feel irritable, overwhelmed, or numb in moments that should feel positive. These reactions are not about the present situation. They are echoes of unresolved experiences that never reach closure. Avoidance, distance, and inconsistency are not character flaws in this context. They are strategies, outdated strategies, but strategies nonetheless. They once served a purpose. They reduced pain, prevented disappointment, or preserved autonomy during emotionally unsafe times. But strategies formed in survival do not adapt automatically to connection. So the wound continues to decide behavior long after the original threat is gone. This is why insight alone is not enough. Knowing that one has patterns does not dissolve them. Awareness must reach the emotional level where the wound lives. Until then, the behavior repeats, regardless of conscious intention. From the outside, this can look like contradiction or lack of sincerity. From the inside, it feels like being controlled by something unseen. He may genuinely care and still act in ways that hurt both himself and others. The most painful part is that the wound often convinces him he is acting rationally. It reframes fear as logic, avoidance as discernment, distance as maturity. This self-protection prevents the wound from being questioned. So long as unconscious wounds remain unrecognized, they will continue to decide who he chooses, how he loves, how close he allows others to get, and when he retreats. Not because he lacks capacity for love, but because the part of him that learned to survive is still in charge. Making decisions for a present it does not fully understand integration means that the different parts of the self are in dialogue rather than conflict. It means emotions, fears, desires, and identity move in the same direction instead of pulling against one another. When integration is missing, love does not flow cleanly. It fragments. One part of the person feels deeply, while another resists, doubts, or withdraws. This is where complication begins. A man may experience genuine affection, attraction, and emotional resonance, yet struggle to translate those feelings into consistent presence. His heart moves forward, but his inner structure does not follow. Without integration, love becomes something he feels, but cannot fully inhabit. Love, in this state, activates everything that has not been unified within him. Unresolved fears clash with desire. Old coping strategies interfere with current intention. The need for connection collides with the need for control. Each part has its own logic, its own history, its own reason for existing. And without integration, none of them lead together. So love does not settle, it oscillates. One moment he is open, expressive, emotionally available. The next he becomes distant, guarded, or uncertain. This inconsistency is not a lack of sincerity. It is evidence of an internal system that has not learned how to move as one. Integration requires confronting inner contradictions. It requires acknowledging that the part of him that longs for closeness and the part of him that fears it are both real. Without this acknowledgement, he acts from whichever part is loudest in the moment. Usually fear wins. Fear is older than love. It formed when safety mattered more than fulfillment. So when love challenges identity, autonomy, or emotional stability, fear steps in to regain control. Distance, hesitation, and ambivalence appear not because love fades, but because integration has not occurred. This is why love can feel authentic yet unsustainable. Without integration, love remains isolated from the rest of the self. It does not inform behavior consistently. It does not shape decisions clearly. It exists in emotional bursts rather than embodied commitment. He may feel deeply connected when emotions are high, then detached when reality demands continuity. He may idealize the connection internally, but struggle with its practical implications. Love stays in the realm of feeling, not action. This creates complexity for both people involved. The person on the receiving end experiences mixed signals. Words do not align with actions. Presence alternates with absence. Promises feel implied but not fulfilled. The relationship exists in ambiguity rather than clarity. Complication thrives in this gap. Love without integration often leads to circular patterns. Conversations repeat, issues resurface. The same conflicts arise in different forms. Resolution feels just out of reach because the root issue is not relational but internal. Integration is the bridge between feeling and responsibility. Without it, love becomes emotionally rich but structurally unstable. It carries depth without direction, intensity without grounding, meaning without movement. The man experiencing this may not understand why love feels so complicated. He may believe the connection itself is the problem. But the complication does not come from love being wrong. It comes from love arriving before the self is ready to hold it fully. Until integration occurs, love will continue to activate inner divisions rather than resolve them. Each step toward closeness will trigger a counter movement toward safety. Each moment of intimacy will be followed by retreat, not because love is weak, but because the inner system is fragmented. And in a fragmented inner world, love does not simplify life. It magnifies everything that has not yet been brought into harmony